My mother grabbed my swollen finger at Thanksgiving dinner and hissed, "You ungrateful little traitor. You've destroyed everything I built you to be." When my fiancé tried to pull her hand away, she screamed at him instead, "You stole my daughter from me." I didn't say a word. That was 10 months ago. Last night, she left me a voicemail begging me to come home. My name is Vivian Castellano, and my mother is the most controlling person I have ever known. It started when I was 7 years old, and it never really stopped. My younger sister, Renata, and I grew up in a house in a quiet suburb outside Charlotte, North Carolina, where the rules were simple. A woman's job was to be agreeable, useful, and quiet. Every evening after dinner, my mother made us practice walking across the living room with paperback books balanced on our heads while carrying a tray of empty teacups. Because a lady never stumbles, even when she's serving others. If a cup so much as rattled, we scrubbed the bathroom tile with a toothbrush until our knuckles bled. Bedtime wasn't stories, it was drills. My mother would sit on the edge of my bed and make me repeat phrases until I said them without hesitation. "Whatever you think is best." "I'm sorry. That was out of line for me to say. You know better than I do." I hated every syllable, but some small, stubborn part of me still wanted her to look at me like I'd done something right. Renata didn't hate it. Or if she did, she buried it deeper than I ever could. By 15, she was ironing her boyfriend Colton's shirts before school and slipping notes into his backpack that said things like, "I only feel like myself when I'm making you happy." Our mother didn't blink at that. She bought Renata a brand new stand mixer, the fancy kind, over $300, and told her she was proud of the woman she was becoming. I poured myself into everything else instead. Gratis, student council, debate team, anything that might finally earn me a version of that pride. When I got my acceptance letter to Emory University's business program, I ran to show her before I even told my friends. She read it, folded it in half, and set it on the counter like it was a grocery receipt. "That's nice, honey. But I hope you're putting half that effort into finding a husband who'll take care of you." She never mentioned it again. The moment that actually broke something in me came a few weeks later. I came home and found Renata in the bathroom, dabbing concealer over a bruise blooming along her cheekbone. When I asked what happened, she laughed like I'd told a joke. Colton just gets frustrated sometimes. It's honestly kind of sweet. Vive. It means he can't help how much he loves me. I stood in that doorway and understood, really understood, that my sister was already gone. And no one in that house was going to save her. Least of all, our mother. So I tried something stupid. The summer before I left for college, I dated a guy named Marcus specifically because I knew my mother would approve of him. He checked my phone without asking. He told me my friends were a bad influence. He wanted my location shared with him at all times, for safety. When I brought him to a 4th of July cookout, my mother's whole face lit up like a firework. She hugged me for the first time in 3 years. I told myself it was worth it. It wasn't. 4 years later, I graduated with a business degree, finished 18 months of therapy I'd started in secret, and fell in love with a man named Julian Reyes. Julian was the oldest of 4 kids, patient in a way I didn't know men could be. The kind of person who remembered which coffee order was mine and actually listened when I talked about my day. When I brought him home for Christmas, he squeezed my hand in the driveway and promised it would be fine. For about 90 seconds, it was. Renata opened the door looking like a ghost of the sister I remembered. There was a fading bruise along her jaw, badly covered, and she was favoring one leg. My chest caved in looking at her. Then she saw Julian help me out of my coat and her face twisted in something close to horror. Viviane, you're humiliating him. You don't do that in front of people. Julian, ever polite, introduced himself and mentioned gently how proud he was that I'd just been promoted to senior analyst. My mother's smile dropped like a mask sliding off. A real man doesn't let his woman outshine him in public. She snapped, grabbing my wrist hard enough to leave marks. That's when she saw the ring. You feminist little traitor. You destroyed everything I taught you. She lunged for my hand, trying to force the ring off my swollen knuckle. Renata, of all people, grabbed my shoulders to hold me still while our mother yanked. My finger turned an awful shade of purple. Julian was already dialing 911 and trying to pull them off me at the same time. I remember thinking absurdly that surely this would be the moment they realized what they were doing to me. It wasn't. My mother grabbed a steak knife off the counter and lunged at Julian. You destroyed my daughter. She was supposed to stay pure. By the time police arrived, my finger was dislocated and bleeding from where the ring had cut into the skin. In the ambulance, once the adrenaline started to fade, something in me went very cold and very clear. I was going to marry Julian Reyes, and I was going to make my family leave me alone. So I did. I blocked every number I had for my mother, for Renata, for aunts and cousins who might act as messengers. Julian helped me change every password, every login, every account. My hands shook the whole time. But each blocked number felt like cutting a rope that had been tightening around my throat for 22 years. The first week was quiet, too quiet. I buried myself in work at the marketing firm where I'd just been promoted, wearing a bandage on my hand and telling curious coworkers I'd had a kitchen accident. Then, on a Thursday morning, my manager, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Priya Anand, called me into her office with an expression like she'd bitten into something sour. Vivian, I got a strange call yesterday. Your mother says you've been stealing from family. Heirlooms. Apparently worth thousands. My stomach dropped straight through the floor. She also mentioned you might be having some kind of breakdown. Said your boyfriend is controlling you. Priya studied me for a long moment. I've worked with you 2 years. That's not the woman I know. But I had to ask. I pulled out my phone and showed her the police report. The dislocated finger, the knife. Her expression softened instantly. I'm sorry you're dealing with this. But she's called 3 times today already. If it keeps up, it could complicate your review next quarter. I left that meeting sick to my stomach. 3 years of 60-hour weeks and perfect client pitches. And my mother was trying to burn it down with a handful of phone calls. Julian's older sister, Camila, worked as a paralegal, and she sat us down that same week with a stack of intake forms and a legal pad. Document everything. She told us every call, every visit, every voicemail. We're building a paper trail. And paper trails are the only thing that actually works against people like this. We had 20 pages of documented incidents within a week. It wasn't fast enough. That Saturday morning, someone pounded on our apartment door. Not knocked, pounded. And Julian checked the peephole before pulling me back toward the bedroom. 2 police officers stood in our living room a moment later, responding to a welfare check. My mother had called claiming I was being held against my will. Ma'am, is this true? The older officer asked, clearly exhausted before I'd even answered. I showed him the restraining order paperwork we'd started, the photos of my hand, the original police report. He sighed. This is our 3rd call like this week. I'd strongly recommend a formal restraining order. We were already working on one. It didn't stop the campaign that followed. My mother told our neighbors Julian was holding me hostage. She called my office and told HR I'd been showing up under the influence. She called our biggest client and claimed I was mishandling their account. Renata began leaving slurred, rambling voicemails on Julian's phone since she knew I blocked her, telling me that Colton had left her because your drama made our family look insane, and that it was somehow my fault. The harassment charges were filed on a Tuesday. My mother escalated by Thursday. She'd called my company's other departments, accusing me of things I'd never done, planting doubt everywhere she could reach. My promotion review, the one I'd worked 3 years for, got quietly pushed to next cycle. Then came the wedding. Julian and I had planned something small and private, a courthouse ceremony 2 months out, told almost no one. Somehow my mother found the date anyway. It turned out a cousin who worked in county records had let it slip. Camila was livid. That's now an accessory to harassment. Potentially, we need to move fast. The clerk told us changing the date meant new paperwork, new fees, another 3-day wait, and no guarantee she wouldn't find the new date too. So we didn't run. We stood our ground. The morning of the wedding, my mother stormed into the courthouse in her best church dress, Renata trailing behind her looking hollow, and a man I didn't recognize, presumably meant to be Renata's new prospect, walking a step behind like an accessory. Security intercepted them before they reached us. But not before my mother screamed across the marble hallway that I was mentally incompetent and that the marriage wasn't legal. The judge, unbothered by the commotion in the hallway, asked if we wanted a few minutes. No. I said, and I meant it. We'd like to get married now. We walked out of that courthouse married, and within the hour, Camila's phone rang. My mother had filed for emergency power of attorney over me, claiming I was mentally unfit due to radical ideological influence. She listed Renata as a witness. That was the moment I stopped trying to protect a relationship that had never once protected me. If she wants a fight, I told Julian she can have one. We brought in Camila's firm's senior partner, a family law specialist named Deborah Okafor, who reviewed everything with the calm precision of someone who had seen this exact playbook 100 times before. This filing is emotional, not legal. She said, no judge takes ideological differences seriously as a competency claim, but we respond aggressively anyway, because the pattern is what matters. We filed for an emergency restraining order. We gathered character references, therapy records, professional accolades, anything that painted an honest picture of a woman who was thriving, not unraveling. My mother wasn't finished. 3 days later, she and Renata pushed into a conference room mid-presentation with our biggest client, announcing to 2 stunned executives in suits that I'd been brainwashed and needed saving. Security removed them, but the client walked. A $2 million contract, gone in under 5 minutes. Priya found me afterward, dry heaving in the office bathroom. Take the week, she said gently, but we both knew what that meant for my career there. The restraining order finally came through. 500 feet. No contact. No exceptions. It didn't stop my mother from finding proxies. Julian's elderly landlady got an earful about that poor trapped girl. Our honeymoon, a modest weekend at a cabin 2 hours outside the city, got interrupted by police responding to a fabricated kidnapping report. We spent our first night as a married couple giving statements instead of celebrating. Renata, meanwhile, had become suddenly suspiciously active online, posting about real men who lead and prayer requests for her lost sister. A man connected to her began appearing everywhere. Julian and I went. The coffee shop, the grocery store, the park. Always just close enough to notice, never close enough to violate the order. Then I found the sent folder. Cleaning out an old email account, I discovered hundreds of messages my mother had sent under my name. Fake resignation letters, accusations emailed to former professors, a message to an old internship supervisor claiming I'd stolen from the company 3 years earlier. She had been quietly dismantling my professional reputation for months, and I had no idea how far it went until I saw it laid out in a single scroll of my own inbox. The preliminary hearing was its own kind of chaos. My mother arrived with a group from her church, several wearing matching shawls, certain that Faith would vindicate her. Renata sat beside her boyfriend, glaring like I was the villain of the story. My mother told the judge, tearfully, that I'd been poisoned by feminist ideology and needed intervention. Then, under cross-examination, Renata cracked, asked why Colton had really left her. She admitted, voice shaking, that our mother had called his workplace 17 times, telling his manager what a devoted girlfriend Renata was, until he was fired for the disruption. The room went dead silent. My mother had sabotaged both her daughters' relationships in the exact same way, and Renata had just said so out loud. In front of a judge, I testified last. I held up photos of a shredded interview suit I'd found destroyed weeks earlier. After my mother let herself into our apartment using a spare key, Renata still had every piece of professional clothing I owned cut apart, each scrap pinned with a handwritten scripture verse about obedience. On the bathroom mirror, in lipstick, she'd written times I gave you life. I can take it back. The jury took 6 hours, guilty, on every count: harassment, cyberstalking, identity theft, breaking and entering, criminal threats. She was sentenced to a combined 3 years, with the possibility of parole after 18 months and a 10-year extension on the restraining order. They let her out in handcuffs. She didn't cry. She just stared at me like I was the one who'd done something wrong. Renata stayed behind in the empty courtroom after everyone else filed out. He hit me because he was stressed, she said quietly. And Mom kept calling his job, making it worse. She ruined it. She ruined both of us. Vive. I told her it wasn't too late to be something else. She looked at me with eyes that had nowhere left to hide. I don't know how to be anything else. She trained us our whole lives. I don't know how to stop. We got her into therapy, the same therapist who'd helped me untangle 2 decades of conditioning. It wasn't fast, and it wasn't clean. Some weeks she blamed herself. Some weeks she raged at me. Slowly, though, she started building something that looked like her own life instead of a performance of one. My career rebuilt itself piece by piece. A smaller firm hired me. Understanding of the chaos, once Priya's reference explained the full picture. It wasn't the promotion I'd originally fought for, but it was mine, untouched by anyone else's fingerprints. Julian's family folded me and Renata into every holiday, every Sunday dinner, teaching both of us, in their quiet, ordinary way, that family could mean safety instead of control. 18 months later, we got the notification that my mother had been paroled to a halfway house 2 states away, barred from returning within the restraining order's radius for another decade. Through a distant cousin, I heard she'd found a new congregation there, and that she told anyone who'd listen about her 2 daughters, led astray by feminism, still waiting to be saved. Let her tell that story. Let her prey on it every night if she wants to. She spent 22 years teaching me that my worth was measured in how small I could make myself. It took a dislocated finger, a wrecked wedding, a lost contract, and a courtroom full of strangers to finally teach me the opposite, that the version of me she hated. The one with a business degree and a marriage built on equal footing and a spine she never approved of, was the only version worth keeping. She couldn't reach me anymore. And for the first time in my life, that silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace.